Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast. Presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh with MitsuTimes. Today, our guest is Chris Barno. He's in the top 10 of the Evo 10 list, currently number 9. How are you doing today, Chris?
Good. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you having me on here. It's kind of an honor.
Absolutely. It was so crazy. You know, I was listening to the your Rad Rides podcast with your buddy, and to hear them mention, reference MitsuTimes, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing.
Heck yeah, man. Got to get the word out about it. It's you're doing a lot of big stuff. I don't know how else all this stuff would be tracked. So
I appreciate it.
On a big service.
So you're one of the seems like few people really pushing the Evo 10 these days. Hopefully we'll get some more in the near future once they get a little cheaper, I guess.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about your car as it sits right now?
Yeah, sure. So it's a 2012 Evo 10 GSR. It's got the leather and sunroof, so it's naturally kind of heavy. Bought it new in 2012. Actually sight unseen. When I first saw them come out in 2008, I was like, man, those are cool cars. So, always kind of dreamed of having one and had the opportunity. So got it brand new. And then things just escalated from there. So right now it's sitting with a sleeve 2-liter with Tron pistons and Sainz 300M rods, stock crank. And then the head's had a whole bunch of work done to it. Started with the busher build and then just kind of adjusted stuff from there. So it's on GSC S3s with Myvic, Elite, 1mm oversized valves, port polish, usual stuff. Right now it was on a Precision 6466 T4. Got to switch over to Zona. And then transmission is Shep Street Strip. And then my buddies Gombos and Joe Rodovin and I did the final drive, put in the 4.188 final drive, which is huge for if you drag racing these things. Evo 8.9 rear diff, running a Powertrain Technologies clutch, a BTT clutch. And, just the supporting stuff with that, ID 2000s, still factory ECU, slicks, again, make a huge difference with the Evo 8.9 front brakes so you can get the 16-inch wheel on. But yeah, that's kind of generic rundown. No weight reduction. Weighted at the shootout, it was 3,400 pounds, which in its racing, setup. So that was actually kind of pleasantly surprised because the last time I weighed it was 3,600. Wow. So yeah, she was chunky, and I'm not the smallest guy in the world either.
I wanted to ask because it was. I heard you say it in the Rad Rides. What does it take to put the Evo 8.9 diff in the Evo 10?
It's really not too bad because the Evo 10 RS that wasn't sold in the States came with that non-ACD, regular diff like that, mechanical diff that came with the old 8 and 9, and the Rally Art actually has that. So there's just an adapter plate that Mitsubishi came out with, and you got to use the Rally Art rear axles. But otherwise, it's really not a bad, really simple installation.
That's pretty sweet.
So it's a pretty common one. The rear diff is strong, but once you start cutting good solid 60 foots with slicks, you're likely to crack that case just because it's thin in some spots. So you swap that out.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, I got to hear your story a little bit. I want to kind of expand on some of the things you said.
Sure.
Why did you choose the Evo 10 over the car that you were also kind of choosing between the 370Z?
It was mainly, just to get everybody else caught up a little bit. I had the opportunity to buy my first new car, and it was kind of between the 370Z and the Evo 10. And I think I like the all-wheel drive aspect, and I think that the aftermarket was much more desirable for the Evo 10. And now that, I'm kind of here and in it, not many people are doing much with the 370Z. Definitely didn't want to go like the Subaru route. That was probably my other big driver, is you saw STIs and WRXs everywhere you turn. So if you see some, just very few Evos, let alone the Evo 10. So it's kind of what drove me down that one, but nothing in particular. Gut feeling.
Definitely glad you did.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had no intentions of racing or anything. It was just going to be a fun little bar, and then, like I said, things escalate.
So you talked about the going from the PT 6466 to the zoning out. Have you? I know you've also had the 2.2 stroker. What all different setups have you had in it besides the one you have now?
Yeah. So it was a 2.2 overboard, which was one of the,
Okay.
early on. Built the engine in 2013 after a Cobb tune. So I had the car stock, threw a Cobb, off the shelf map on there with the Grim Speed and everything stock turbo, and classic car starts knocking, and don't know any better, didn't pay attention to it, ended up cracking a ringland. So initial intention was just to kind of go FP ride and enjoy it, and then as soon as I cracked that ringland, it's like, oh, okay, let's just go for gold here. Let's do everything. I'm a big proponent of building things up stronger than you initially need.
Yeah.
So it's just a let's leave it. Let's go big time. And that's when the kind of overbore thing came to light. Like, yeah, let's do that. It can't be bad, right? Which later down the line had gasket issues. But so I ran with that built engine and quartermaster 8-leg clutch on stock turbo for like 2 years. Just waiting to save up for the turbo kit.
Yeah.
And then turbo kit came on, and it was that 6466 T4. So I threw that on, and so it's not had a whole bunch of different setups really. That's the one that I ran that entire setup until this season. So the MAP 22 sleeve 22, and then that 6466, and just kind of been building up from there. The car does have a surge tank now. It's not not running just a factory setup anymore, but a fuel surge tank in the back. So that's kind of been the stuff I've been building up on, because once you run out of fuel, that's your bottleneck. Let's start fixing that. So that's what I was working on. Because ID 2000 6466 will get you pretty far further than I had it.
So you talked about it a little bit, Chris, but what was your original goals? You just wanted to, maybe throw a bigger bolt-on turbo and just enjoy the car?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I had no intentions of E85 really. I'm 80, but yeah, it was mainly just stock frame turbo, small guy, maybe 450 horsepower. Just have some fun with it. And even after I built the engine, I was looking at maybe I'm trying to remember the size, like Borg Warner. I think they have 7670, even a smaller turbo. Never dreamt of doing that 6466. And then once that kit came up for sale, it was a used kit, and the price was just ridiculous on it. I was like, okay, I guess we're going big turbo. So that's how that happened. But yeah, the initial plans with the car were just putz around and enjoy it. But of course, I still do. It's just a little bit more violent than the initial plans.
Put you back in the seat a little more.
A little bit.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about, Chris, was your kind of regrets in this build, just so that others can avoid the same mistakes or the same, kind of feelings that you have. I wanted to talk about what things you would change if you could start all over with the factory stock Evo and build it to how you want now. What would you change in that process?
Luckily, there's not a whole lot. The biggest one though is that 2.2 overbore. Once you start pushing big power, there's a lot less meat between the cylinders to seal a head gasket, and I went through tons of head gaskets before it was really determined that something needed to be done. And that's when my engine builder, P&R out of Greensburg, Pennsylvania, said, hey, let's O-ring this thing. So we O-ringed the heads with copper O-rings. And that kind of solved the issue, but not enough to where I was really confident in pushing the thing. And it always did okay, but I think it was just an unnecessary thing. So I would have stuck to a 2-liter, and that's why I'm back to a 2-liter now. And other than that, I guess what's a positive about how this whole build has gone, like I said, it started in 2013, so we're like 9 years into it. So everything happened really slowly. um, Maybe I would have gone to just straight to V-band instead of T4. But other than that, there's nothing really that I'm like kicking myself over,
Yeah.
which, very fortunate.
Yeah, for sure. Not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, yeah. It's also not, I mean, it's not like it's, a 7-second car.
Right, but I mean, pushing the door at nines, that's,
Yeah.
not an easy feat either.
Yeah, yeah, true.
Especially
Yeah,
when you consider, what is it, less than 10 Evo 10s in the world have even been in the nines in the first place. I mean, that's quite an achievement.
yeah, I mean, it's funny, last fall I was number 5 with a 10-1. So it's not that I was really good at number 5, it's just that it was surprising that a 10-1 got you to number 5.
Yeah.
Or sorry, yeah, I was number 5.
And
so
we've seen a couple newcomers just slowly creep up there.
Which is awesome. Yeah, so you got 4 new guys up there in the top 10 that are just, killing it. They're getting after it. I think you had mentioned it, how the, how not many people are in the Evo 10 platform. I think a big part of it is a lot of the Evo guys are still in the 8.9 stuff. It's still all viable. To go do an Evo 10, you're essentially changing platforms. Because if the 10 had a 4G63 in it, I think you'd have a lot more guys out there running them.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Since it's all completely different, and it's there's a bit of an Evo 10 tax on some things compared to if you had something with a K24 or something. So I just think that it's not quite as attractive as those other platforms, or the guys that would be doing these Evo 10s are still out there tearing up the 8s and 9s, successfully.
Yeah, and like you said, the Evo 10 tax, when you're looking at the price of a 4G63 block versus the price of a 4B11 block, there's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's insane, and it'll come down with time, but it doesn't make it any less painful right now.
Right.
So there's a bit of a, that'll push some people away from the platform for sure.
So Chris,
especially when you hear about guys, like I said, drag racing K24s and just using the blocks pretty much as a disposable item. You can't even think about that with this.
Yeah, exactly. They got they have the luxury to bring 10 different blocks with them to the track.
Yeah, without hurting too much.
So Chris, with that being said, why do you keep pushing the Evo 10 platform? What motivates you?
Man, I just enjoy it. That's probably the biggest thing. They get a lot of satisfaction about doing my own work and all that stuff, and just seeing what can come of it. And we love the people, going to the shit up, meeting the people, talking to everybody, and all the friends that we have and stuff. So it's kind of like, of course the car is fun and everything, but it's everything that comes along with it. And I'm this far along, so why stop here?
Yeah, for sure.
That's I always ponder if I had spent this amount of money on like a C6 Z06 or something like that, where I would be. But oh well, this has been a ride, and like I said, the people are all great and super helpful. So, but yeah, it's just, at this point, it's getting those 9s. I have them on paper. I just got to get everything dialed in. Get the stars to align. It's probably got a 970 something in it as it sits.
Definitely.
So
yeah, you got, if you arrange the group by 60 foot, you're definitely in the top 5. So
yeah, and that 60 foot for that 10-1 pass, it was a 167. I've cut a 155 in it.
Yeah.
So it's there. I trapped 4 miles an hour faster and that was even an old tune too. So I think it has more than that. So I think it's just really ready for it. You just got to get it there.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk, Chris, about what it took to run a 10 and what your setup was, because I know there's a lot of people out there, Evo 10, maybe they haven't, they've done a couple mods here and there. They're, busting 12s out and they feel like they should be going faster, or they want to go faster. When did your car break into the 10s?
It was, so that current 9s goal that I have, that all started off as a 10s goal, because it was just fighting me. Could not get it there. The car was on street tires, and I hadn't changed the final drive yet, and it was just 1103. Same thing. I had it on paper, but it was just, with this much power on street tires, if I were to change anything, I would just left on maybe wastegate or something like that in first gear, and then ramp the power in second gear and up, or something like that. Because I just kept ripping the tires off on the line. And then one thing about these 10s is the gearing is just brutal in them, where the top of fourth at like 8,000 RPMs, I think, or 8,500 is like 128 miles an hour. So you got to make that call to shift to fifth or ride the rev limiter or try to rev it out further than, is really efficient for your setup.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's a whole bunch of limitations right there. So yeah, I just constantly fought the street tires and the gearing because the car had the power to do it. And then over one winter, I think it was over winter, changed out that final drive and then threw slicks on it. And the very first pass, I drove the car to the track, which is about an hour and a half away, with the slicks in the back of it. Got to the track, changed the slicks, had to sit in traffic getting into the track. So everything was just hot. And put the slicks on, and they immediately, of course, called the slicks class. So I went up and made my first pass, and it was like 1096. And I was like, okay, I got my 10-second pass.
Just fills your motivation back up.
Yeah, I was like, I got it. That was good. That's fine. 1096, I'll take it. And then let everything cool off and ran the next pass, and then went 1036. I was like,
wow.
Oh no, okay, new goal. Had no idea it had that in it. So yeah, I went pretty much from 1103 to 1036.
Wow.
Well, it's actually 1016, with just final drive and slicks. Pretty much.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so there's a lot. It sucks, but there's a lot to be had there with that, just traction and everything. But yeah, once I hit that 1036, that's pretty mind blown with that one.
And how did that pass feel compared to the 1103? Like, did you know in the car, like, all right, that was a great pass?
Oh, going from street tires to slicks, that's 60 foot, is wild. Like, you almost, of course you can screw it up, but you're so used to riding that fine line on street tires, like pedaling and spinning and bogging and stuff, to where the slicks, they just go. And you feel it come out of the hole like that. You're like, okay, this is it. that was not that hard.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it felt real good. Of course, the rest of it, is pretty similar, but this definitely coming off the line is where you feel that.
So, like I said earlier, Chris, you're in the top 10 of the Evo list, all the Evos in the world. What does it take to get onto the top 10 list, and what does it mean to you, to be on the top 10?
Yeah, it's huge. I remember I didn't necessarily know about this MitsuTimes thing until Matt Galliano yelled at me one time for not being on there. I was like, oh, okay, let me see what this is all about. And that was maybe 2 years ago. And then once I was in there, I was like, man, that's pretty cool. And it really, not that I needed justification, but justifies continuing to fight this thing and keep going for it. It's cool to be one of the people at the forefront of this whole thing that has probably been in it one of the longest times compared to everybody else. Just grinding slow. But to get there, it's pretty much everything I've just lined out there into one bucket. You're going to have a heavy car and make a lot of power, or got the thing and not make as much power. But the biggest thing is, like I said, the slicks and final drive. That's the easy button in the end once you're chasing that.
Kind of, like you said, you got to have all the right parts and have the stars align.
Yeah, and just do it right. Put yourself, if you're doing your own work, do it correctly. Don't half-ass things. Buy the right parts. Buy good parts, because down the line, troubleshooting becomes that much easier because you don't have to question, this part versus this part.
Yeah.
Just that. I always use the term good due diligence, and and just do it right.
Well, Chris, that rolls me into my next question of, someone, they just bought an Evo 10, bone stock. What advice would you give them for their build? Just like you said, doing your due diligence. But is there anything, even when it comes down to what to look for in the Evo 10 before they actually do the purchase?
Yeah, your first So there's some common things out there that people need to look for. You'll have timing chain issues before 2010, so they tend to stretch. So I think there's a recall on that, or a TSB at least, service bulletin about that. Timing chain will stretch, and that's never good. So people have had, some failures due to that. So always verify you have the right timing chain. The info's out there. You can kind of see what those timing chains look like. And then other than that, all the models are pretty well the same, across the GSR at least. If you're looking at an MR, you don't really want to be looking into the kind of stuff that we're doing here unless you want to dump a lot of cash into the transmission. And, I don't know a whole lot about how that thing rolls out, but you don't see too many MRs really pushing power just because that transmission they're having troubles with. But they are starting to be able to tune the clutch pressures and stuff in the MR. So maybe we'll start seeing those come up a bit.
Yeah, I definitely I think we're at the peak here of we're going to see the SSTs get really fast. Yep,
I agree. So yeah, MR, GSR, it's kind of, obviously it's the buyer's choice. Timing chain issues, it's the only thing you really need to look out for. Other than that, there's certain things here and there, like the fuel pressure regulator reference line on the intake manifold. You need to make sure that that's secure. Just little things like that. Once you start building, like I said, I always try to build with some kind of anticipation or build beforehand. The perfect example is driving on stock turbo with a sleeved engine and a twin disc clutch for like 2 years. So when that turbo was changed out, I didn't have to worry about getting in and change the clutch. I didn't have to worry about, I didn't sleeve the engine the first time around, so now I'm limited. Just do it all right the first time. Buy once, cry once. Because if you go and build that short block and you decide not to sleeve it while it's out, and then you get to 650 horsepower or something, which is still kind of pushing those stock sleeves, you always want more. Well, now you're really in the hole because you got to pull that thing and then go get it sleeved, or CSS, which I think that's a new thing that's out too. That seems to be taken off, and it's a good bit cheaper. But just while you have everything out, just build it up. Just do it right. Buy once, cry once. A lot of the stuff that I've done in the car, other people have done it, and that's all forums, which, you wonder how many people know of those these days anymore.
Rest in peace to the forums.
I know Facebook is awful, but there's still a lot of information out there on forums for stuff you want to do, especially entry level, starting out, getting the thing rolling. I can't suggest forums enough. I still jump on those pretty frequently. And then if you go to build it, if you're going to do the wrenching, then cool, you just got to buy parts, and then you got some time, get a couple cases of beer and throw it in the garage and enjoy it. If you're not doing it yourself, the labor costs, they can get pretty astronomical on a build like that. So, always be aware of that. But I've always had, all things being equal with the knowledge, if everybody has the same knowledge and everybody knows what they're doing, no one's going to take care of your car better than you will. So if you can do it yourself, just, get in there and do it. I know people are short on time and stuff, and people have different, livelihoods than I do, but I'm fortunate to where I can work on the car on the weekends and stuff, and I know that when I'm working on it, I do the best that I can, and I do it with the knowledge that I have that it's gonna all stay together. So, and I just know that I'll take care of it better than most anybody else would, just because she's mine.
Gonna keep it forever now.
Yeah, right. There's a bond.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Six Sigma Dyno Tuning. Kevin Jewer has been tuning his own 7-second quarter-mile race car, as well as many other single-digit quarter-mile record-holding cars for over 20 years. He has tuned many different platforms, from DSMs, Evos, and many more. Kevin has also had his hands on almost every tuning software available, from Haltech to ECM Link and everything in between. He also provides pro trackside tuning at Ozark Raceway Park. Find out more about his services at sixsigmatuning.com. So, by the time this airs, the 2022 season will be over. What are your goals for 2023 with this car? I wanted to hit on, you're just getting the car back together. And what's going to be different for next year is you're going to be tuning it yourself, right?
So I'll be on a talk with Robert at the shootout, which is the other thing that's really nice about the shootout, is you got guys that have forgotten more about turbos than I'll ever know. But talked to Robert there with Zona and Force Performance, and we're thinking I'm going to go to a 95 64S. Still with the T4 housing, but it'll be open scroll. So I'll just have that on the engine. So yeah, switching turbos. Like I said, back to the 2-liter now. Going to get that back together and rolling. And then I have been tuning the car for about the past 2 years.
Okay.
Yep. So that 1016 pass, that was me tuning it. Can't recommend doing that enough. Tuning yourself. It got to the point to where I wanted to do that surge tank, and you change anything with fueling, you should really, again, due diligence and make sure that everything's still happy. Well, my tuner was no longer in the business, and there were track events to where it's not a requirement of them, but it just having support on the tuning side of things is huge. It was to the point where I didn't know how to change like the launch RPM and stuff like that. And I'm very self-sufficient with stuff, and I hate relying on other people. Nothing against them, but I prefer to just kind of be a one-man show with it.
For sure.
And that's I started there, and then that's when I discovered that Evans Performance Academy. You don't mind me plugging them?
Absolutely.
Incredible library of different tuning lessons and whatnot for all kinds of different platforms. I mean, he does 4G 6.3. He does a bunch of standalone stuff, just tons and tons of information. Bought his course, the Evo 10 ECU flash course essentially, and it's about the cost of a tune. So if you're comfortable with computers, it's nothing crazy. He walks you through every table in ECU flash. You only use maybe, say, 20% of them. You don't really touch a lot of them. But he tells you the logic behind each one. I mean, he's got 4 different Evos on there that he tunes live on a dyno, from, the bone stock scratch tune the bone stock tune to a scratch tune, from a simple bolt-on car to a car that actually had the same setup I had, the 64, 66, ID 2000s, Hobbs switch, everything. And he goes through every single step of the way. So by the end of that, I think it's 60-some hours of material. And by the end of it, you have the confidence to really just dive in and go after the thing. And it's really not that hard once you know what to look for and kind of what you're doing and how to be careful with it. The hard part is when things were screwing up outside of the tune.
Yeah.
And troubleshooting that. So I've tuned one other car here, just a car down the road, just to help him out. And it's a 2008 with a one of Argentari's turbos, 62 mil. Okay. And tuning that, my car had been sorted out, so just switching tunes on that was pretty simple. Drivability is a little tricky, did all that. And this other car, like I says, 2008, and this thing was tired. It is such a tired car. So it was all built and everything, but it was just like O2 sensor dying, map sensor dying. Oh, map sensor's dying because the injectors are leaking and getting fuel into the map sensor. Like he blew through like 5 map sensors. So alternator died. Oh, it wasn't the alternator. There were 7 out of 10 grounds were bad and rotted on the thing.
Holy cow!
So the tuning part's easy, but it's hard to step away and be like, hey, this isn't your tune. There's something in the car. You have gremlins all over this thing. So yeah. I mean, the car's doing well now, but it's just like it's very good to have that kind of mechanical background and knowledge to kind of catch those issues in the log, or somehow troubleshoot it on the car
for sure
before you start going nuts about the tune. But yeah, long story short, going for a 95 64S from Zona, and then I'll be tuning it from scratch again. Well, not scratch again, but just getting the boost levels right and everything. But right before the shootout, when it blew the 64 66 on the dyno, it made 637 at 36 psi and 9 degrees of timing because I was just sorting out the fuel. So these cars are typically in the mid-teens on timing. So
Wow.
it was ready to rip. We'll see how things go. I might do a new intake manifold because it's kind of the choke point at this point. The stock intake manifold can become a bottleneck once you start flowing a lot. So I might swap that out, but just kind of see what happens.
I love that. You're kind of self-sufficient on the tune, and especially since you're on a stock ECU, because that gives you the window to go to an ECU that has fail-safes built in. If you want to eventually go to that down the road, and you don't have to worry about, finding a new tuner or anything like that.
Absolutely. And I can't tell you how many times I've posted, I'll post on ECU Flash or something like that. Hey, is anybody else having issues with this? And, just stupid things like the map sensor is at maxed out, but as soon as the car hits 40 PSI, the load registration would just drop. Like, we couldn't tell why. But leave it to, a bunch of the guys out there that I know well and stuff, and my buddy is just always harping on me, go stand alone, which I don't blame him. And I'm sure once I do, I probably will at some point here. Once I do, I'm sure I'm going to wonder why I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah.
I kind of planned to do it this winter until the turbo went and then had the engine project and stuff. So, but maybe next winter or something. We'll see. But yeah, I'm sure it'll be a breath of fresh air to get off this stock ECU stuff that you're just seem to always be fighting.
For me, just to have the protection of the fail safes is worth it.
Yeah, and I completely agree because I'm getting close to maxing out that 4-bar sensor at like 43 psi, and it's like, I can go to 5-bar and rescale everything. It's like, wow, if you're pushing that much boost, you really need some fail safes on this thing. You're playing the fire at that point. Yeah. So, kind of check my brakes a little bit. But I mean, the real goal is to just get 9s and then kind of go from there. Right. I really don't want to cage this thing either.
Yeah.
So,
like you said, the interior is too nice to put a cage in it.
Yeah, it has AC and all that stuff, so it's still definitely a street car. I just don't want to gut it and cage it because you make a big decision there. So, we'll see.
I forget who it is that's always telling me that streeting or driving a cage car on the street without a helmet is more dangerous than taking a non-cage car down the drag strip.
Absolutely. And that's one of the bigger reasons to not do it. It completely reworks the physics of the car in a crash. It's not going to do the things that it's designed to do from factory, and as a result, and you also have the steel bars that are pretty much right next to your head.
Right.
So yeah, as far as safety on the street, you're completely, unless you're wearing a helmet every time you drive somewhere, you're really changing how all that works. And just go venture on other forums too about people trying to drive on the street with a cage and they're just getting eaten alive.
Right.
So it's definitely a personal choice, but I like taking friends and family members out for rides and stuff, and it just, it'd make me a little uneasy.
Putting a helmet and a fire suit on every time you went to the post office.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. So, but yeah, it definitely changes, and it's a huge decision you make because that's when that's a big next step, and you really got to think about what you really want to do with the car.
Right.
Or just drive it on the street.
And kind of talked about it in the Rad Rods podcast, but you also have to consider, man, what if I want to sell this?
Yeah, and for sure, because you're definitely getting into a niche market there. Then.
Right.
Absolutely. You gotta find somebody who would want that, and you'd probably end up, once you're at that stage, you'd probably be parting out and selling a roller.
Yeah,
if I'd guess.
Because your market, like you said, is going to be a fraction.
Yep.
So, Chris, do you have any long-term goals with this car? I mean, obviously, getting a 9 is a short-term goal. Is there anything that you foresee wanting to do way down the road?
Man, I really don't know. It's starting to. It would probably be that whole standalone route that we touched on, because you can do a lot of cool stuff with standalone ECUs. From traction control strategies, launch strategies, and I'm a pretty nerdy guy and I like to screw around with things.
Yeah.
And I think it would just be a lot of fun to try different methodologies there and just test different things out and see, what works and what doesn't. So just kind of tinker. But aside from the nines, not really. Like I said, once I start cresting that 150 trap, they're going to be looking for a cage and a chute. Yeah. So I don't really want to, at the moment, do that. So, yeah, probably just make some big power and then eventually go, make big power on a 4-bar sensor and then eventually go standalone and see what happens there.
I have to tag Josh Redden in this once it's posted. They're working on an Evo 10 plug-and-play adapter for the Haltech Elite.
Yeah, so there's PowerTune Australia. They just came out with a CAN adapter where they got a Haltech 2500 running on a 10.
Oh,
but it's supposed to work with pretty much any standalone. It's kind of a middleman to still run all your CAN stuff, because that's usually another sacrifice that you get out to whenever you go to a standalone, is that maybe your cruise control doesn't work, your AC doesn't necessarily work, and a lot of people are coming out with stuff with works. Where at Mtron they have a plug and play package for their ECU that runs all the CAN and everything.
Yeah.
So there are options out there, for sure, and that's why I'm confident in saying that I'd like to go to a standalone, is because I know I can still keep my creature comforts rolling. But yeah, that flexibility that people are coming out with for the CAN stuff to run off any standalone is huge. It's really attractive to a lot of people, I would think.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing some great parts for the Evo 10s coming out.
Yeah, and more drag builds and stuff, and people really just getting into it, which is great. I love seeing that.
For sure. So, Chris, what events can we see your car in action next year?
The shootout. Always doing the shootout. That's pretty much my goal, is to have the car in order, ready to go for shootout every year. Because that's where it gets its most passes. That's where it has a lot of fun. That's where I'm really just kind of gunning for it. Other than that, Keystone Raceway Park, which is just east of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'll do testing tunes there. I might do track rental. That's our local track. You'll see a few of us out there. We got Mike Gombos, who was on this podcast a few episodes ago. He's out there. He'll run out there, and TPG guys are always out there. But event-wise, specific events, pretty much at the moment it's just shootout stuff.
All right. You have any IFOs coming through that area?
They used to do IFO at Keystone, and they don't anymore. But maybe with that new drag racing association, that I think it's World Drag Racing Association now, WDRA, a lot of drag strips joined that sanctioning body and got away from IHRA. So maybe that'll draw some attention from some event groups to start doing some events there.
Let's hope. I always love those events.
Yeah, and I could do them. It's just typically it's a bit of a haul. Depending. I don't typically drive too far with this thing, just because like I said, it's fun intense, and it's fun and everything. But to go chase down an event, 4 or 5 hours away,
right?
It gets it can be a little cumbersome sometimes. So, especially since I like to camp.
I can definitely understand that. All right, so I always like to, talk about the hypotheticals. You're pretty dug into the, small group that is the Evo 10 performance group. Sure. So, what do you predict, or how do you see the future of the top 10 Evo 10 list? I mean, it's already changed so much, like you said, over the past 6 months.
I think, it's going to get pretty deep pretty quick, I think. Top 2 there, Matt and Miles, those are tough guys. Of course, 8-1 with Matt and then 7-9 with the English Racing car. Matt's car, he sold it off, but it's still out there, still running. They ran at the shootout.
Yeah.
So that driver's still getting after it, which is great. But, you're still mid-9s up until number 4 spot. So, and a lot of these cars are just itching to go.
Yeah.
Daniel Brighton kind of came out of nowhere there with that 9-1. That's great. That's awesome. I think there's going to be a lot of guys coming out of the woodwork like that. So I don't expect to be in the top 10 for too much longer unless I can get a good solid pass under my belt.
I know I talked to Miles a couple of days ago. He said that he's coming to World Cup with that Evo 10 set to kill.
Yeah, it's got good spicy tune on it.
Yeah, he's got a whole new shifter arrangement that's going to make it faster to shift for him. He's pretty excited.
Awesome, because I think they're going into 5th gear now. They've really changed a lot of their strategies with that car. They've really changed a lot, just because there's some sensitive things. Once these things get real nutty, Valtrain's pretty sensitive on them. So they're doing a couple things to mitigate that, it seems.
Yeah,
but
and they've done a lot of aero things over the last year and a half. So should be
awesome.
That'll be to see.
Oh yeah, the World Cup is fantastic. This will be our 5th year, whatever, going to it. Love to see everybody come out. Yeah, I think this top 10 is going to get pretty quickly here.
You see any newcomers dropping into the 10?
Like the top 10 or the Evo 10?
The top 10.
I mean, the guys that you see that kind of, like I said, kind of pop up out of nowhere. They pop up because they just hit the top 10.
That is true.
So a lot of these builds are kind of in there in the background a little bit, and then they hit it and they get it going just right.
It's taking a while to get them together.
Yep.
I think that Justin Paris, he has the SST and that car, 10.4 at 144. That
144.
Car's,
for sure.
He's
got the trap for it.
Yeah, he's getting it.
Get that 60 foot down. I think Ryan Stahl, he's going to be in the 8s once he gets things lined out.
Yeah.
I mean, he went 9.5 there with a 1.7 60 foot. That car's probably got a 1.4 in it.
Yeah, and they said that was like 60% power.
Yeah, and he trapped 157, so he'll be in the 8s. So there's a lot of fun stuff popping up here and there. It seems like every week I get on Facebook and there's a new picture of an Evo 10 or something like that that's got some wild setup.
I feel like you kind of started or popularized the stock look, and it seems like now everyone I see come through the list, I'm like, man, this just looks like a stock car.
Yeah, if it was me, cool, awesome. I'll take it. But yeah, I mean that's part of the fun part. Like you said, like Daniel Brighton's car, you take the slicks off of it, it looks pretty unassuming. He's trapped in 162.
Yeah.
Like, okay. I think it's cooking. So, yeah, that's kind of the fun part. You never know what you're going to get whenever you see one of these things looking relatively stock.
Yeah, for sure. Just like, your buddy was saying in the Rad Rides podcast, you kind of want to change the hood and make it just look like a Lancer and see what people think.
Yeah, put the gray wheels back on, the spoke wheels, just plain Jane. Yeah, that's the fun part. It really wouldn't be too hard to do, and it would surprise some people. That's one of the best parts about it. You get some, at this level, you're starting to get into like messing with bikes and stuff,
right?
And it's pretty unassuming, and then they get some nice surprises. It's fun. Everybody's happy, laughing in the end.
Well, Chris, is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to that's helped get the car here and helped you kind of get where you are too?
Man, first and foremost, the wife Darcy. We got our little 2-month-old Zoe now, so she's coming with us to the racing stuff. But I mean, if it wasn't for Darcy, I'd probably still be on stock turbo. But I'll see a turbo kit pop up, and she's just buy it, just go do it. And then it's always that something breaks on the car, and an event's in like 2 months, and I'm like, so she's like, well, you got 2 months, go get after it. And I'm like, yeah, it's not the cheapest thing in the world. I said, no, just go get it. We can do it. Go get it. Like, okay, cool. And like, when the turbo blew up the day before we were leaving for the shootout, it was the night before, so it was Wednesday. We were leaving Thursday morning. He's like, well, you can find a turbo and put it on tomorrow morning, or install it in the pits at the shootout. And I was like, okay. So that's what we did on Thursday. We installed that whole kit. So she just drives me. She really keeps me focused on the whole thing, and doesn't let me slip. She'll call me out if I do try to slip. Yeah, and then my usual support group and stuff. The guys at the shootout, Derek, Joey, Gombos, Chad. We always that's our crew. A lot of us this year nobody was able to race besides me, so I didn't get any passes in, so it didn't hurt too bad. But we really plan to come out next year with some guys putting some numbers down.
Heck yeah.
So that'll be a lot of fun. But,
Gotta
my,
make sure we schedule those weddings correctly next year.
Right, exactly. Yeah, those guys, everybody got dealt a bad hand on that one with the date change and the shootout. But yeah, next year I think we'll have some guys coming out and running. So, but yeah, those are my core people.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I appreciate you coming on. I can't wait to see you here in a couple weeks for World Cup, and
we'll see you out there.
We'll party again.
Sounds good, buddy. I appreciate you having me on, and take care, and really appreciate everything you're doing with MitsuTimes here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
We'll see it.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.